Hey everybody, I'm going to be making a pheasant mulligatawny soup. I have some pheasant breasts here, and what a mulligatawny soup is, it dates back to the 18th century. It translates to basically pepper water, I believe, but it's so much more than that. It's wonderful. It kind of has a little bit of heat to it. It's not a predominant curry flavor. The flavor should be a whole blend of all the different spices and seasonings. So let's get to it. All right, everybody, as we're clearing off our cutting board here, we're going to start with the mirepoix. The traditional French mirepoix is set up with 50% onion, 25% celery, 25% carrot. Over the years doing this recipe in anywhere I've been in, whatever restaurants or catering I've done, the percentages I've kind of fell on was 60% onion, 40% celery, and 30% carrot. I don't want my soup too sweet. If you put too much carrot in there, that's what'll happen. The sweetness of the carrot will prevail. I like the celery with the curry and the ginger. It just gives another layer. I like the flavor. I like it pronounced. And again, as you cook and you do this recipe, you can change it to however you like. Those are the percentages of the mirepoix that I like. I do everything small dice because it's going to finish in the soup. It's probably going to stay in there. This whole soup from start to finish was about an hour, 40 minutes, and that's including the prep here for my mise en place. Basically, I get everything cut up and I have everything ready so that the only thing I have to do is stand at the stove and just assemble everything in the pot. So I like the Granny Smith apple. Gives a little bit of tartness. I like the apple itself. I don't saute the apple. I don't know why I put it in when I do, but that's what I've always done in my soup. And so it's basically habit for me. Also, I like to cover in the beginning in my little intro, I said that I won't be adding flour, but as I was making the soup, muscle memory, I added flour, and so I steered you wrong a little bit in the beginning. So I would like to clarify that yes, I do add a little bit of flour, and when I do that in the soup, you'll see that I add a little bit of water, a little bit at a time. That's so I don't get any clumps and turn the flour into dumplings. Right here, I'm cutting up the ginger root. What would happen, you can also grate it. People like to grate the ginger because what happens, it removes the fiber out of the final product you're going to be using. I don't mind the fiber. It's all good. You just got to make sure when you do it, everything is minced finely. Your fiber will be minced as well, and it's a non-issue. Lemongrass, on the other hand, is a very woody stalk. I took a little bit, I sliced it, I'm really thin, and I minced it really well. The other way you could do it is cut it to the piece you want and actually take a mallet and pound it. Get it crush all those fibers and that woody fiber, and then you would still have to chop it. So I just I like to keep it minimalistic. I use my knife pretty much for everything, smashing garlic to chopping, mincing. I use it as a mallet. It's just what I've done. Again, I don't want to dirty up too many different things, and I'm still learning with the camera profile. I want to keep everything simplistic, and there's no cross-contamination here because everything is going into the soup that touches the cutting board. It is going into the soup, so putting the pheasant here is no big deal. Again, I like to do one step at a time. I get everything into julienne strips, push it over to my left side, which is my non-dominant hand, which controls all the food product. And then I'll take it, and then as you see, I'll dice it up and I'll put it in the container, and we're almost ready to make the soup. All right, I have the flame on medium high. I want to brown my garlic. That's one of my first initial steps. A lot of times you start with the meat, but I like to get my garlic. I like to bring it to the next level. I like to start to brown it. You get that nice roasty flavor. You're going to get a good example here. I just added all my pheasant. For the soup, the color doesn't matter. So if you watch and you actually watch the bubbles in the pan as the pheasant is cooking, you see that the pan is overcrowded. It will go from sauteing to quickly steaming and boiling in there. For a soup, that really doesn't bother me. If you were looking to make a stew and you needed the color, that pan was definitely overcrowded. I should have done the amount of pheasant in here. I should have done it in 3 separate batches in the oil. I'd get a nice brown. I wouldn't have dropped the temperature in the pan so much, but for a soup, I'm generally, when I'm doing it, I was in a restaurant, you only have a certain amount of time, so I go from start to finish as fast as I can in a soup, and that was one of the steps that I just cut out. So here I added the mirepoix, I added the thyme, I'm going to add the bay leaf, I believe, next. Then I am going to add a little bit of the curry, and with the curry, since the lemongrass and the ginger is already in that fresh curry paste, here for the amount of pheasants, I used 4 pheasants, which was 8 fillets. I used 1 big giant rounded tablespoon of curry paste. I add the rest of my ginger and my lemongrass. I mix it up, and here's where I add the I'll be adding the flour where I said I didn't, but what that does is that'll incorporate with the oil that's in the pan, a little bit of the juices. You want to mix that up thoroughly so you don't have any flour lumps, and then you slowly add the water in here, just a little bit at a time, to help emulsify that flour into the butter. And it was just enough to help change the consistency. I wasn't going to make that soup thick with the flour. At this point, if it was supposed to make the soup thick, then I would have used more flour and more oil, because that would have created the roux in the pan, and that would have helped thicken that. But for the soup itself, the rice is going to be what gives that little binding piece to it. I added parsley. I used dry parsley. I just don't like leaving around a lot of fresh parsley in the house. If you buy fresh parsley, it just elevates the flavor that much better. If you grab a bunch of parsley, you're probably going to use 1/3 of the bunch of parsley. Just chop it up like anything you would, like the garlic, and then toss it right in. I have the coconut milk, the coconut cream, and the basmati rice. Here again was a 1/2 cup of rice for the 4 pheasants. You don't see it in the video, but I actually added another 1/4 cup to it, and it wound up being too much. So for the amount of soup that I created here, which was going to be about enough for probably serving 10 people, I would not add the extra 1/4 cup of rice, because what happened to my soup at the end, it became more rice than soup. So I was right on the money with a 1/2 cup of rice. At this point, the soup is basically done. Now you're tasting it, you're letting all the flavors amalgamate together, you're giving it, normally I let soup simmer, but what I do here is I've let this soup go on a medium boil probably for a good 20 minutes, because what I was trying to do, and when I make the soup, I try and break the starch down on the rice. I want that to break down. I want it to be a nice solid kernel. It's just something that I've done. Near the end, I'll turn it back down. I'll turn the soup down to a lower simmer and let it finish out. All in all, cooking wise, I think it was on for just about 50 minutes of simmering. The meat breaks down from the small dice and it turns into the last little bits of strings. So it's just a good way to do it. You can definitely let the soup go a little longer. It's not going to hurt it. You just have to watch the amount of liquid that's left over, the broth in your soup for the amount of rice you use is the only trick to this. You just basically add a little bit more chicken broth. If you need to add a little bit of fresh curry, that will be about it. Again, all in all, this soup from start to finish took me probably an hour and a half, hour 40 minutes tops. It was pretty darn good. The ginger, the curry, and the lemongrass gives it a little bit of a bite alongside of the black pepper that I added. There is a little bit of cilantro, but I didn't add a lot to it for this amount of soup. It was probably a teaspoon. Look for the recipe card. That'll be next. I'll be overlaying that at the end of this video. If you liked it, please subscribe. I really appreciate you guys checking these videos out. You have any questions? If I didn't cover something, let me know. If you want to see me cover something in the future, I am going to go probably switch over from some wild game and do some more recipes that I've done in the restaurants. Pretty darn good. Thank you very much. See you on the next one.